Welcome to another episode of Afterlife Mysteries. I'm Kalila Smith, and joining me today are my co-host Billy Roberts and Judith Arslan. We're going to be talking about paranormal investigations today, because even though the medium's main job is to, of course, give messages to the bereaved from their loved ones, mediums also work on paranormal investigations, and it's a very important role because you really need that spiritual side covered when the people are there doing their scientific investigation. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today. Welcome, guys. Hi. How are y'all doing today?
Hi.
Oh, good today.
Great. Awesome. So, have you guys been on paranormal investigations together, or you have your own paranormal group, don't you, Jude?
Yes, I'm a member of Spectre Paranormal and UFO Seekers in the UK, and we're just setting up now to start to do different investigations on. It's not just ghost investigations. We're going to take on the cryptid side, like Yetis, Loch Ness, that kind of thing. So, we and UFOs, obviously, that's huge for us. So. Yeah.
Yeah, UFOs are a big deal in the UK. They really are. You guys have had a lot of situations. In fact, very recently, and I say recently as in the last few months, I read an article where a UFO landed on a property that I think belonged to Prince Philip, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
I've not read
an old article I read a few months ago, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, I'll have to read up on that one. I've not heard of that one, but yeah, there certainly have been a fair amount of sightings just recently during the pandemic as well. It's actually increased. So
yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that a lot. And you guys had a really big one, like back in the 1950s. There was a huge one, wasn't there?
There was one in the 80s, Rendlesham Forest. That was at I think it was American Air Force Base, and that's very well known, very well documented.
Interesting. So, Billy, how are you doing today? And
I'm all right. All the better for seeing you two.
Wow, thank you very much, and we are much better for seeing you as well.
You say the sweetest things, Billy.
Doesn't he? Yes, I know. Very nice to start the day off like that with a nice compliment. Thank you. So, the medium's role. We've talked about this before, Billy, about the medium's role in the paranormal investigation. And a lot of people think that it's so separate, like all the scientific people come in and then we drag the medium in. And in actuality, lots of times you may do that. You might bring the medium in after the fact once people have gone in. But a lot of times the medium has gone in already before the scientific people have gotten in there. I think it just depends on the situation. Every situation in a paranormal investigation is, of course, different. There's no one way you have to do things. But I think depending on what's going on, I think particularly in the case of, and I don't know if you guys agree or not, we'll chat about this, if somebody's having what they perceive to be a negative entity in their home, say for instance, a situation like you've had, Jude, in the house that your family owns, where people perceive this, and I say they perceive it because, of course, if it's not investigated, we wouldn't know yet, but people perceive that they are having what they believe to be a negative entity in their home. Don't you think it would be valuable to send in the medium first to kind of get an idea of what it is we're dealing with here? Because I know that when I walk into a place, and I'm sure Billy will agree, the first thing I can pick up on is if this is residual energy or if this is an actual intelligent entity. So what are your thoughts on that?
Strangely, in the early 19th century, it was called place memory. And the reason for that was, this was the beginning of stone tape theory, where we've discussed before, where every voice, every emotion is encapsulated in the bricks and mortar of a building. So and a medium has to determine whether it's a spiritual, a disembodied soul, that's communicating, or whether it is this, as you said, residual energy. And more often than not, I think spirit communication is quite rare. I'm very skeptical of the whole concept of paranormal groups because, first of all, I think you're right. I think a medium should always be in attendance. A paranormal group without a qualified medium, an experienced medium, is treading on very thin ice. It's an emotional minefield. And so a medium has to be supervising, I think. And in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the US, but there are millions or thousands rather of paranormal groups. They're all over the place. They're on Facebook, and there's lots of them. And they're playing games. They set themselves up as a business, and it's a bit of a hoo-ha to a lot of them. So I think that we need to tread with great caution when we talk about the paranormal, because stone tape theory, as we've discussed before, is a sort of a pseudoscientific approach to it all. It's the belief that everything is caught in the bricks and mortar. And it seems to be more often than not in damp buildings near water. Grey stone, sandstone, they seem to be the conduits for this kind of phenomenon. So I think that we need to look at the whole concept of paranormal groups and what they're trying to achieve. I don't know what it is they're trying to achieve. Energy can't be destroyed. We know this. It only transmutes into a different form. And so we can't eradicate a poltergeist energy form, although many people believe that we can. I don't think we can. I think we can change its form. We can transmute it and encourage it to move into a different environment. But the whole thing is fascinating. I know I'm waffling on a little bit, but I'll leave it.
No.
I absolutely agree with you, Billy. I agree with you 100%. I mean, certainly the part where in the UK, people watch a TV show over here. They go out into the shops and they buy a piece of equipment. They then accumulate a few friends and bingo, they are paranormal investigators. And to me, these types of groups are the ones that put people at risk, because they're not educated. They have no idea what they're going to come up against. They have no functioning medium. And that's another thing as well, is that there are so many mediums. Everybody's a medium, and they're all going out there, and they're literally sort of filling vulnerable people's heads with nonsense. And, it takes the genuine mediums, the decent ones, to come forward and try and put their minds to rest as to what's being told to them. And of course, when you're going into a property and you are or a place and you are not fully skilled, you've got no training, and you're coming against things, you're telling the public about what you think may be there. And they're using gimmicks such as table tipping, Ouija boards, that kind of thing. These are all dangerous objects to use in the wrong hands. And of course, when they open something, they're not closing it. And so they're letting things be released into the ether. And that's going to wreak havoc for people. And that's where the dangerous side of it comes. So with paranormal groups, there are so many of them, and many of them are not qualified to do the job.
Oh, I agree. It's the same thing here. It really is. And what people don't understand, and we're always saying, oh, this is dangerous. Why is it dangerous? And it is because there are what we call active hauntings out there that are not necessarily intelligent entities. There's a huge difference, and a lot of people don't realize this. There's a huge difference in people who have crossed over and have gone through the light and can come back and communicate. They're not hanging out in haunted buildings. They're communicating with people that they're connected to and from their lives, and disembodied entities that never crossed over.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I watch TV in arrears. So in other words, I sometimes watch a TV show from 2 years ago or a year ago, or even longer than that, because I don't have like normal cable. I just kind of watch whatever's on the streaming channels. and I happened to be watching a show, um, and I think it was called what was it called? I can't remember. It was it's run by the host is William Shatner, and he
Oh,
was
yes.
yes. So it's his newest show, but it's from a few years ago, and it's very interesting because I was watching one of the episodes on rituals. And this is very interesting because he also looked at the rituals of church groups, of religious organizations. And one
Yeah.
of the things he did was he looked at people doing exorcists. And people assume an exorcist that's a demon that's been conjured up, and you got to call a Catholic priest and all of this stuff. And the thing is, people have a belief in these disembodied entities, that these discarnate souls that have not crossed over, earthbound entities, more or less. And it's a belief that's in Buddhism, it is a belief in Judaism, it is a belief in Catholicism, it's a belief in many other Protestant religions. Just about every culture acknowledges this. In fact, there was a rabbi on the show who was talking about, most possessions are not demons per se, but these discarnate earthbound souls. And that's where the danger comes in for those of you who are out there who want to play around with Ouija boards and stuff like that. It's not like a major demon's going to come up and be conjured, because you really have to, work hard. They're not going to come up so easily. But these other earthbound entities are kind of lingering around, hoping to attach to a person. They stay here to be attached to the world of the living, and they get energy from the world of the living. And a lot of them are attached to, bad behaviors, crime, or addictions. So what happens is, when an unwitting person goes into a haunted building, or especially cemeteries, and they start using these Ouija boards, and you think you're talking to the person whose name is on that headstone, and that person's not there. But what is there will lead you to believe that that's who it is.
Yeah.
And this is
Absolutely.
how the door gets opened, because you're inviting them in. And I can't name names, but I mean, I know people who are like, oh, and I was talking to the little girl, and the little girl came and she held my hand. It's like, it's not a little girl. That little girl's not there. She died 300 years ago. She's gone. She's probably reincarnated by now. That's not the little girl. But it's something that's going to present itself
Yeah.
as that little girl and allow you to believe it, and that's how they attach.
I think to be honest, all groups should actually research every aspect of the paranormal, of what they want to investigate, because at the end of the day, if you go into something without any knowledge, you're just leaving the door open. You're ringing the dinner bell. You're going to
Absolutely.
literally have all kinds of chaos breakthrough. And of course, obviously, the poor people that are opening their doors to the groups to let them in are the ones that are going to end up suffering in the long run. So I
Right,
think I
exactly.
think knowledge is power, and certainly with groups, you can't go blind into an investigation. You have to know and research what it is you're going into and roughly what's there, so you can protect and guard yourselves.
Yeah,
Positively, don't you think, Billy?
I, and Jude knows, and I'm very skeptical about the paranormal, even though I work as a medium. But I did. I appeared as a guest on I can't even remember the name of the group. They got me off TV, and TV. Let's face it, TV makes mediums. Doesn't matter whether you're good, whether you're bad or indifferent. If you're on television often enough, your name just goes everywhere.
Of course.
I not that mine did, but I was on a well-known television program for a while for my own. Anyway, I digress a little bit. But I was invited to guest on a paranormal, and there must have been about 30 people there when I arrived. It wasn't in my neck of the woods, and they paid £20 each. 30 people, possibly more, or might have been fewer, I don't know. And they broke it up into groups. So there were two different people running groups during the evening to make it more interesting. And I did a sojourn, I did a requiem. I couldn't sense anything, only off the people who were there. And I caught one of the women who was organizing, running the group, she had something in her pocket, and she had an EMF meter on the table, and it was playing up to what she was doing in her pocket. And I realized she was doing it remotely. She was playing with the lights on it, so she was cheating. And there was a lot of hooing and hawing from the people, because obviously she'd given them what they were looking for. And that's a well-known group. Now, I'm not saying all groups do that, but I think a lot of them are run by people who do not understand what it's all about. And we are looking for something that we're looking for a disembodied soul to communicate. And apparitions don't communicate because they have no intelligence. They just pass through and around you, unaware of your presence. When you come face to face with an entity that can actually stand in front of you and talk to you and receive information from that entity, then it's a different concept altogether. But the majority of people who attend these evenings, and I've done many, many of them, they haven't got a clue what it's about, and they don't really understand what it's about. When I was approached by Multimedia, this is in 1995, and they wanted me to do a series of videos called Billy Roberts Investigates the Paranormal. And one of the houses we went to was called Jingle Hall. I don't know whether you know it, Judith.
Yeah.
It was allegedly the most.
I've seen the programs actually. I've got them on video.
I found myself having to embroider things. The producer was in my ear saying, "You've got to do something," because we rented this place for 2 days. So I found myself exaggerating what was going on there. And now we're talking about days where the night cameras were rarely used, and there were no electromagnetic or non-contact thermometers. So it was all down to the medium, which was me. Now they wanted me to take as many mediums into the place as I could, and I took. I think Judith will know this because she's seen it. It must have been about 9 or 10 mediums that I took in. And it's amazing, if you're told you're going to a haunted location, long before you reach it, your mind creates its own ghosts and demons. And all these mediums who were pseudo mediums, they all came up with a different thing. They all gave different information. And I found it hilarious. And you'll find that with any group. You'll find that with any group. You tell somebody, "I'm taking you to a haunted location tonight." Before you get there, your skin will crawl, and you'll have all these ideas and notions in your mind. It's all because the mind is the common denominator. The mind is what makes it all happen. So it is fascinating. And, you've had a lot of experience, Kalila. So you must have some stories to tell.
No, yeah. I mean, I always made sure that the groups that were going into building, and a lot of the stuff that I did was for classes, and I always kept the groups small because once you get into a situation where you've got huge numbers of people trampling through, I don't care how haunted it is, people have to realize it's not like poltergeist. You don't have things shooting out of electronic equipment like what you see on movies. It's very, very subtle. So the more people you have running in and out, talking amongst themselves, making noise, footsteps, all of this stuff, this is going to interfere with any subtle things that you might pick up because not everything's going to be a living entity. You might have energy that's residual that comes across as a scent. You might smell cigarette smoke or cigar smoke if someone smoked in there. They've had places where somebody made coffee a lot, they would smell the coffee, or someone liked a particular perfume and they would smell that. I mean, these are all subtle things that are going to come through, and you really need the less activity in the background you have going on, the better. So I've always kept groups very small.
I actually have quite a lot of the ITC equipment. You know, I've got spirit boxes, portals, cameras, digital recording devices. I actually have that. And to be honest, I'll be very honest with you, I actually sit on the fence with it. I've got the SLS camera. I've got all kinds of these gadgets, and I can assure you, with the K2 meters, a mobile phone can actually trigger those. So if you are on an investigation and you are using these kinds of equipment, you must keep your mobile phones away from the equipment because it can actually manipulate it. And I think, to be honest, how dishonest that was, that somebody sat there possibly, manipulating equipment to get oohs and ahs, which is not what it's about. And it's those type of groups that I have real issues with, because, they are literally deceiving not just the members of the public, they're deceiving themselves, and they're deceiving the venue that they're sat in doing all of this. And and then they're sort of broadcasting it all on social media with them. I think I saw one was in a castle somewhere. They photographed their own shadow and tried to portray these photographs as being an actual shadow figure. And you could clearly see that it was, in fact, the shadow of themselves. And, it's those kind of things I find hilarious in one way, because obviously that is very unprofessional of them to do that. Even the proverbial dust particle, I find kind of things really hilarious when you've also got a medium in that particular group that's communicating with a dust particle as if it's spirit of someone's long lost loved one. I find that kind of thing absolutely hilarious, because you can clearly tell it's either a bug or it's a dust particle, and you've got, they're all there and they're all shocked and they're all putting it on a live on social media, and you're watching it and you're just thinking, my God, have people paid for this?
Well, people like sensationalism. I mean, here in the States, and a lot of the motivation, like Billy made mention, I don't know why they're doing this. They all want to be the next big paranormal TV show.
Yeah.
They all, for a while, and I don't know if they still do it because I haven't really looked that much, but every time you saw a paranormal group, they all had the matching T-shirts. They were all standing the same way with the arms folded, just like one particular television show. And it's like, okay, that's not going to get you there. It's already been done. It's already been done.
The group I'm in, we've all got matching T-shirts.
Oh yeah. It's like I would tell people, do not show up on my investigation with matching T-shirts. No.
The reason why we've done that is so that people are aware of who we are. But the thing is that we are not a group that are going to go for the oohs and ahs. As a matter of fact, what we intend to do is show the downside of the paranormal world is that you could sit for days in a location and get absolutely nothing. It's, spirits are not performing monkeys. They don't perform when you ask them to. And, I think it's quite disrespectful to ask a spirit to perform like that. If they're not up to performing, then that will be shown. I think some groups, they force the issue with the spirit, and I think that causes trouble as well, and it is very disrespectful. And of course, that's not what we're about. We are more into the other side of the paranormal than we are with ghosts and spirits.
I'll show you how serious, a prime example, how serious people are. Jingle Hall was actually sold. This is going back some years now. It was sold as a haunted location. We're talking about an old edifice, an old building that was probably the 12th century or something. Originally had a moat around it. And, stories circulate about skeletons being found in the moat, which is now dry. Anyway, cut a long story short, the actual building was sold as a haunted location. And the man who bought it ran it as a business, and he had complaints that nothing appeared. There were no manifestations. So he sued the guy who sold it to him.
Oh, no.
Representation, and he won the court case, which is an example of how things work out. So it is big business today.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely big business. Sure, yeah.
The house that I own, that we know has got something in it, I was offered big money a night to actually let groups come into this house, and I refused because it's a house, it's a private property, it's not open for the public. And even I don't go there very often. It's not a place that I enjoy going to. And I've got to say that I was offered a substantial amount of money per night, and I refused it because I didn't want anybody that strangers going through, and you just don't know what dangers are going to erupt there. And naturally, it's something personally that I don't believe in, and certainly it won't be sold either. It's not going to be a house that's going to be put on the market because I wouldn't want anybody else to go through what I went through there. So basically, it's just going to be probably left empty after my mum's gone. So at the end of the day, it is big business. It's huge business. I don't think it should be run as a business. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't think these places should be ran as businesses. I don't think groups should run as businesses. I mean, to be honest, it's not, none of this is scientifically proven, really. There's nothing in huge letters about it. And I really think sometimes that groups shouldn't assemble if they've got no knowledge of anything that they're doing, because it is dangerous territory. It can be dangerous.
In saying that private groups, yeah, I totally agree with you. But the way Kalila's companies are run, it's like reenactment, isn't it, Kalila?
Well, it's a little bit different because there's a million ghost tour companies as well all over the world. We were actually the first in New Orleans and possibly even the first in the United States. We've been in business for quite a while. And it's very, very different because it's not an investigation. And we get calls from investigation groups. Can we come and do an investigation? It's like you won't be there that long. And you're not going inside a private residence. People live there, obviously. So what we're doing is very different. In the text of a ghost tour, you're touring, you're walking, you're going to a location, you're hearing the history of the building, and they're telling you the ghost stories, what had happened there. You're not going to sit there and do an investigation.
Both yourselves are very highly qualified in what you do. You've got all that knowledge, you've got all that experience, you've got all that, you've got everything going for you. So you're actually very qualified. You're actually professional. But I mean, to me, it's the groups that you see setting up on social media. They've seen something on the telly and they're going out and buying a K2 meter, and next thing you know, there's about 10 of them. And I mean, to be honest, I saw live a few weeks ago, and I was horrified at this. And even though we're on lockdown here, you get groups going out, sort of going out and taking a bit of a brisk walk through a cemetery. And there's about 10 of them or so, and they're going through, and they've got the digital recorders and their K2 meters, and they're actually placing spirit boxes and these devices on graves. And it's, as you say, they're not obviously talking to the spirit of a 300-year-old child. They're actually talking to something else, if they are. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, to me, graveyards are the least haunted.
Yeah.
Well, they do have, like I said, discarnate spirits waiting for people because they know people are going to be coming through, and they know people will be easy prey. But yeah, I always tell people that's the last place you should look for ghosts. And I tell you what happens with some of these shows, and I don't, take away anything from the shows. I mean, entertainment is entertainment, and I'm all for it. And I'm from back in the day when I was on, most of what I was on was documentaries where they were doing interviews and reenactments, not necessarily what they call the reality shows. But what usually happens with people who do get things attached to them, they call somebody like me or Billy to get rid of it. That's where the problem is.
Exactly.
I had a show in New Orleans in 2009. We did a show called Haunted New Orleans. It was a local show. And I got a call. There was one show in particular that was just, I couldn't believe somebody would even do this. But I got a call, and I was with a friend of mine in a car. We're driving to one of the tours or wherever we were going. And a young woman on the other line said, I need to get somebody to come to the house. We have a poltergeist. And I'm thinking to myself, and I just finished telling my friend, I don't have to advertise for any kind of stories for this show. They just come to me. There they are. And I looked at it and went, here's another one. And she said, I said, well, tell me a little bit about how this happened. And she says, well, my brother and I were watching such and such television show, and we were drinking beer. And, you know, in the States, it's always, we're drinking beer. And it's like, okay. And she said, after the show was over, her brother said, we could do that. And she said, well, how are we going to do it? She says, come on, let's go over to the cemetery. We'll go do it. And they get in the car and they go do it. So while I have her on speakerphone and my friend's listening, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And when she got to the point where we went to the cemetery, I said, what did he take? And she says, oh, he didn't take anything. I said, he took something. What did he take? And she says, well, I don't think he took anything. She says, but ever since we went there, we've had problems. So I said, okay. And I said, well, it just so happens that we are looking for something to investigate. I took her information. I said, I'll get back with you. So when I hung up, I told my friend, I said, what you want to bet it'll take me 5 minutes to get out of him when we get there what he took at the cemetery, because I know he took something. And sure enough, within 5 minutes, he got to the point of where I saw this tomb that was open, and I looked in and I saw a leg bone, so I reached in there and I took it. So here this guy has a femur bone of a human, and he's drinking. He's still drinking. He's getting tanked up. He's having a good time. And he goes back to the car, and he says, and then when I got to the car, I opened the door and I said, if anything's out here, come on home with me. And I said, okay, well, wow, you didn't do what the television shows did. You did something totally different. And as it turned out, I went there and I had to bring another friend with me because what I felt was a heavy influence of Native American spirits. And this was in an area that's on the North Shore, very rural area. And I picked up a heavy influence of that. And the thing is, when people don't realize, when you pick up indigenous spirits that are attached to the land, you've got to call somebody who's in that tradition. Like, you can't go into a cemetery that's got a lot of voodoo spirits, and then, what are you going to do if you bring one home? Well, you got to call somebody who's knowledgeable in that tradition. So it just so happens that a fellow psychic friend of mine, very good friend of mine, is Choctaw. So I was like, well, got something here for you. You got to go clean this up. So we had him go out and clean it up, and we told the young man, we're like, don't do this again. Do not go back out there. Well, within 2 months, he went back out there. And he's calling me again. I don't know what to do. And I said, I don't know what to tell you to do either, because we're no longer filming. And I told you don't go back in there. So you're kind of on your own now. But that's what people don't see. That's the part of this that people don't see. You don't get that disclaimer of, okay, we're doing this as a reenactment on television. Don't go do this. This is what you're not supposed to do. But what was really spooky and kind of creepy was that while we were out there, while Philip was working with this guy and doing this clearing to kind of put the spirits back, calm them down, and kind of put that to rest, I have a video of the guy walking around, and you see the ectoplasm like this following the guy, and it's like, oh boy. It's like, and there it is. But that's what people don't see, and that's what people don't understand, and they don't take the time. And it's really hard for people, and Billy and I know this for so many years. I mean, he's very well versed in, how many different traditions. We didn't study just spiritualism. We've studied all of these different spiritual paths, and, it's taken years and years and years of accumulated knowledge to understand what's really going on in the physics behind all of this stuff. And it's not just, people are not taking the time to learn that.
I think with paranormal groups here, you've either got the groups that do just the groups, they just go into places as a group, or you've got those that advertise and they bring in members of the public. And, the members of the public, they are there for entertainment. You've got some that want to see a ghost, you've got some that are not sure what they want to see, but they're there anyway. And you've got some that sort of, they moan because if they don't get any activity, they will moan. And then if they do get an activity, they then moan. So, you've got different groups of people that go on these. And to be honest, it's a lot of the members of the public on these groups are going with groups that really do not have the knowledge that you both have. And, you know, it is shocking what you see, that what they are advertising. And, you know, a lot of it, they do a lot of gimmicks on these, I call them shows, basically. They're just sort of paid shows. And they do a lot of gimmicks that basically they don't know anything about. They are opening things. They are not closing things. I mean, I've seen people that don't even open in prayer or anything like that. They just open something and then sage after they've done something. You know, they'll commence the seance and then they'll just sage around afterwards. And I'm just sort of looking in awe, thinking, well, that's not right.
Exactly.
You know, what have you released into the ether? You know, and you can't tell these people either, because they know better than you do. And so, you know, to me, sometimes I get very angered by some of the things that I see, and I get very frustrated, and then you have to turn and look away, because you can't fight them all. And there are more of those groups now than there are the ones that have that knowledge and the ones that know what they're doing. There are more bad ones. So, you know, I just sort of keep to our own thing, and at least we know we're doing something right. But you know, it is so sad to see what's happening in the paranormal field, and even the medium field at the moment, what's happening there as well. You know, it is shocking.
Yeah, it's always been like that. And the thing is, you know, and I haven't been doing it as long as Billy, but, you know, I have been doing it a long time. And, you know, the thing that I learned very early on was that I can't control what other people are doing, and I cannot let it bother me. I have a very detached approach to that in most things.
Yeah.
I just am very detached from things that I cannot control. And I got to a point when people were calling me, unless I was doing a television show or writing a book where I really needed to do something like that. You know, I would get these calls from people. I think I have a poltergeist, blah, blah, blah. And okay, well, tell me what happened. Well, I was playing with a Ouija board and I was doing a satanic ritual. And I go, stop. Just stop right there. And I said, I'm not doing it. And they would say, well, are you scared? I said, it's got nothing to do with being scared. I know what I'm going to have to do when I walk in there, whatever attaches to me, and it will, I'm going to take it home to my family, and I know what it's going to take to try to get rid of it, and I'm not willing to do that, and you're not willing to pay me to do that. So I'm not doing it. So I developed this. Yeah, I mean, I really developed an attitude of not my demon, not my problem. And a lot of people made fun of me for it. A lot of people criticized me for it. But the bottom line is, I'm not an exorcist. So if you think you have a demon, you need to call an exorcist.
Exactly. But there are a lot of these, I call them the New Age groups, that actually don't believe in demonic presences. They don't believe in dark entities. They think everything's love and light. And, you know, unfortunately, my response to that is not everything on the earth plane is love and light. And it's not love and light in the universe either. I mean, what's that all about? You know, with anything good, you will get the balance of something bad. It's like a set of scales. So, you know, you're going to get good people, you're going to get bad people. And naturally, you will get good and bad spirits or entities. And, you know, a lot of these groups dismiss dark energies. And to be honest, I was reading one group on social media that goes out and does investigations, that they do a lot of film work and things, and I just looked and they were saying, oh, you know, there's no such thing as a demon, and they were laughing about it. And I actually wrote and said, if you have never come across a demonic presence or a dark entity, then I'm going to question mark your ability as an investigator. Why have you never come across one? Or can you not see what you're dealing with? Do you not understand what you're dealing with? You know, that child may not be a child that you're talking to. You know, that gentleman that you've seen in the corner of that room might not be what it's presenting itself to be. You know, you've probably come across one and you've dismissed it. And you know, they're telling people then that these things don't exist. You've got then those people going out there, they're messing about with gimmicks. You know, that they're doing crystals and Ouija boards and things like that, and they're opening a doorway. Some of the first things to come through a doorway are the nasties. To be honest, they're there waiting. They're waiting for you to open that door. Absolutely. You know, they're going to come darting in, and you know, they're just going to say, "Oh, I've got your great great granddad here," and it isn't. Obviously, they will give you enough information so that you accept it and so that you believe it, and then all hell breaks loose. And then it's the likes of yourselves that are then called in to try and pick up the mess that some of these groups have actually done. And I'm not against all groups, because I'm a member of one myself. I'm against the ones that do not know what they're doing. They have no background knowledge. And they, to be honest, for a group, or even some mediums are also the same. They don't believe in demons or dark energies. I personally would question mark their abilities as to what they claim they can do, because to me, we know that these things exist. We know they're around. Again, I'm like you. I wouldn't deal with one. I wouldn't attempt to. I wouldn't want to take it home with me. I believe I've dealt with one in my life, and it wasn't very pleasant. And it's still there, and I'm happy for it to be where it is and not near me.
Well, that's true. Now, Billy, let's get Billy's opinion on this, because Billy, I know this is your favorite subject, love and light. So, and I'm teasing him because he says that love and light to you, and it's not genuine. But so, Billy, what do you think? I mean, what is your opinion on all this? Because Billy and I are actually writing a couple of books on this kind of thing right now. So.
We have to make it clear that the spirit world is not a place. It has nothing whatsoever to do with places. It's a condition, a transcendental state. It's an axiom of physics that no two bodies of matter can occupy the same space. But even in the Bible, it's mentioned that there are innumerable mansions, Jesus said. I'm not a religious person, but we know that these layers are where different people live. Now, if a person hasn't dealt with a drug addiction when they pass over, they still have a craving for drugs once they acclimatize to the new world, the new life that they've got. If a person is insatiable for killing people, somebody who's a pervert and has all the traits of a pervert, when they pass over, they're still the same individual. You don't suddenly become angelic or celestial. You still have all the qualities that you had when you were in a physical body. The only difference being you have access to people's minds. Now, what we call the vagabonds of the astral world, these are individuals who are not very good. You can call them demonic. You can call them evil, like Adolf Hitler and his henchmen. These individuals live in a community that they've created for themselves. So thank God we will never go there unless you have in your own bony box the same cravings that they had, which you haven't. So we know that the spirit world is a unique, nobody really knows what it is, what it's like. We can philosophize over it, we can discuss it, we can throw different ideas, but we don't really know until we go there. But we've already been there. We came from there at the beginning. So you have to tread with great caution where these paranormal groups are concerned. Because as Judith and you've said, there are demons. I try and avoid the word demonic, but it's the only way we can describe somebody who's evil and has evil intent. And these people delight in preventing light from coming into this world. And what they would do is gravitate towards the gullible, the vulnerable people who attend these groups, and they will influence their minds. And this is why I said you've got to be of a sound mind with no background history of psychological problems, because I've seen it, I've witnessed it. If there is a history of psychological problems, it can precipitate all the old feelings that you've had, even though you're over it. It can cause them all to return. And for many years, I worked with Julian Calendro. He was an American exorcist priest. And he took me to many different countries and many different places. I went with him. And I've seen possession, and I've seen certain things which he only allowed me to observe, because there were some things he knew that I wasn't qualified to be involved in. And one of them was, this is very strange. I might have told you this, Kalila. But one of them was a guard from Belsen. He was an elderly man, and he was possessed by the bitch of Belsen. A woman, I can't remember her name now, but she was known as the bitch of Belsen. And when he went into his trance, because his voice changed and everything, he was very masculine. He came out with all these expletives and profanities, and he was obviously a different personality altogether. But more than this, though, wasn't just his persona, his character that changed. Everything around him changed. The atmosphere in the room was transformed. It was cold, it was evil, and he
oh, sorry, that's. So sorry, it's my mum's phone's just gone off.
I wonder what it was. I thought it was a communication.
Right.
It could have been.
And Julian Calendro is no longer with us. He passed a few years ago, but he taught me a lot of things about possession and also atmosphere. Now, we've said, I don't know how many times we've said on this program, that as an audio and videotape is coated with an electromagnetic substance to enable it to capture sound and image, the air is charged with electromagnetic energy. And it's this electromagnetic energy that actually captures sound and images. You have to be prepared for that. And you have to be qualified as a medium to differentiate between the two, because they can mimic. They can mimic each other, even when it's not a disembodied soul. They can replicate something else. And a person who is a vagabond or alleged demonic, they can actually mimic somebody who's good, and they can lull you into a false sense of security, and then they can close in on you.
Absolutely agree with you,
Yeah,
Billy.
that's true.
Absolutely.
Well, we are kind of running out of time. I'm gonna leave us with this little this little experience that I had a couple of years ago when I first started working with physical mediumship. We were doing table tipping at a particular center in New Orleans with myself and another medium, and there might have been some other mediums there, but there were customers there. We had brought some people in to see if they could get into communication, and it was something very strange that day because the table was not lifting, and I've seen a 200-pound table lift and levitate and move across the room, just being moved by spirit. So, and this was weird because we could not get the table. It was sluggish. And one of the things we do in these seances, we sing. We sing to raise the vibration. We're trying to raise the vibration. Well, long story short, I told the other medium, and he and I for many years had this argument about, I tell him not everything's light and fluffy, and he'd say, oh, no, 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 everything's beautiful over there. And I said, listen, why don't you get up and just go turn the electronic music on, and maybe that'll help. And when he did, he got up to walk across the room, and he stopped. And we're in pitch black darkness, and his voice was shaking, and he said, Kalila, close the circle. Shut the circle down now. And I said, what's wrong? He says, I'll tell you in a minute. So I shut it down. We turned on the lights. We had everybody leave. And he was shaking. And I said, what happened? And he says, I've never had this happen before. He said, I got up and I went to go for the boom box, is what we call it. And he said, I ran into a solid person. And he said, sit down now. And we later learned that somebody had, a psychic had been doing a reading in that room, and she decided to do a cleanse on a guy who had just gotten out of prison. So it's real, but we do have to run. We have run out of time. This has been fantastic. Jude, thank you as always for coming out. And Billy, thank you. And thank everybody for listening in and tuning in to us. I want to invite y'all back for another episode of Afterlife Mystery. So see you soon. Have a wonderful day, folks.
And you.